there, I'm Stephanie, and here with me I've got Sirius Black, also known as Q, and we're going to read Babbity Rabbity and the Cackling Stump. Someone's really hoping they're going to get into Gryffindor this year. A long time ago, in a far-off land, there lived a foolish king who decided that he alone should have the power of magic. He therefore commanded the head of his army to form a brigade of witch hunters and issued them a pack of ferocious black hounds. He's very ferocious. At the same time, the king caused proclamations to be read in every village and town across the land, wanted by the king an instructor in magic. No true witch or wizard dare volunteer for the post, for they were all in hiding from the brigade of witch hunters. Are you part of the brigade? However, a cunning charlatan with no magical power saw a chance of enriching himself and arrived at the palace, claiming to be a wizard of enormous skill. The charlatan performed a few simple tricks that convinced the foolish king of his magical powers and was immediately appointed Grand Sorcerer-in-Chief, the king's private magic master. The charlatan bade the king give him a large sack of gold so that he might purchase wands and other magical necessities. He also requested several large rubies to be used in the casting of curative charms and a silver chalice or two for the storing and maturing of potions. All of these the foolish king supplied. The charlatan stowed the treasure safely in his own house and returned to the palace grounds. He did not know he was being watched by an old woman who lived in a hovel on the edge of the grounds. Her name was Babbity, and she was the washerwoman who kept the palace linen soft, fragrant, and white. Babbity saw the charlatan snap 2 twigs, one from the king's trees, and disappear into the palace. The charlatan gave one of the twigs to the king and assured him that it was a wand of tremendous power. I know, it's very exciting. Hi. It will only work, however, when you are worthy of it. Can you be worthy of it? Every morning, the charlatan and the foolish king walked out onto the palace grounds, where they waved their wands and shouted nonsense at the sky. The charlatan was careful to perform more tricks as the king remained convinced of his grand sorcerer skills, and much of the wands that he had cost so much gold. One morning, as the charlatan and the foolish king, you're the foolish king now, were hopping in circles and chanting meaningless rhymes, a loud cackling reached the king's ears. And Babbity, the washerwoman, was watching the king and the charlatan from the window of her tiny cottage, and was laughing so hard she soon sank out of sight, too weak to stand. I must look most undignified to make an old washerwoman laugh so. And he ceased his hopping and twig twirling and frowned. I'm growing weary of the practice. When shall I be ready to perform real spells in front of my sorcerer? The charlatan tried to soothe his pupil, assuring him that he would soon be capable of astonishing feats of magic, but Babbity's cackling had stung the foolish king more than the charlatan knew. Tomorrow, said the king, we shall invite our court to watch the king perform magic. And the charlatan saw the time he had come to take his treasure and flee. Alas, your majesty, it is impossible. I've forgotten to tell your majesty that I must set out on a long journey tomorrow. If you leave this palace without my permission, sorcerer, my brigade of witch hunters, right here, witch hunters, will hunt you down with their hounds. Tomorrow morning, you will assist me to perform magic for the benefit of my lords and ladies, and if anybody laughs at me, I shall have you beheaded. Uh-oh. The king stormed back to the palace, leaving the charlatan alone and afraid. No. Look at them jumping around. What do you think? What do you think of the book? Hang on. His cunning could not save him now, for he could not run away. He could help the king with magic that neither of them knew. Seeking revenge for his fear and his anger, the charlatan approached the window, and Babbity, the old washerwoman. Peering inside, he saw the little old lady sitting at her table polishing a wand. In the corner behind her, the king's sheets were washing themselves in a wooden tub. The charlatan understood at once that Babbity was a true witch. Oh my goodness, a true witch. And she had given him his awful problem, could also solve it. Crown, cried the charlatan, your cackling has cost me dear. If you fail to help me, I shall denounce you as a witch, and it'll be you who's torn apart by the king's hounds. I don't know how much tearing apart he will be able to do. Old Babbity smiled at the charlatan and assured him that she would do everything in her power to help. The charlatan instructed her to conceal herself inside a bush while the king gave his magical display and to perform the king's spells for him without his knowledge. Babbity agreed to the plan, but with one question. What, sir, if the king attempts a spell that Babbity cannot perform? The charlatan scoffed. Your magic is more equal to the fool's imagination, he assured her, and he retired to the castle, well pleased with his own cleverness. The following morning, all the lords and ladies of the kingdom assembled in the palace grounds, and the king climbed onto a stage in front of them with the charlatan by his side. I shall first make this lady's half disappear, cried the king, pointing to a twig from the noblewoman. From inside a bush nearby, Babbity pointed her wand at the hat and caused it to vanish. Great was the astonishment and admiration of the crowd and their applause for the jubilant king. Look at. What do you think? Can you do a dance for me? Next I shall make that horse fly, said the king cried, pointing his twig at his own steed. From inside the bush, Babbity pointed at her wand at the horse and rose it high into the air. The crowd was still more thrilled and amazed, and they roared their appreciation at their magical king. And now, said the king, looking around for an idea, and the captain of his brigade of witch hunters ran forward. Your Majesty, said the captain, this morning Savory died of eating a poisonous toadstool. Bring him back to life, your Majesty, with your magic wand. And the captain heaved onto the stage the lifeless body of the largest witch hunting hounds. Sit down, sit down, sit down. The foolish king brandished his new twig and pointed at the dead dog, but inside the bush, Babbity smiled and did not trouble to lift her wand, for no magic can raise the dead. When the dog did not stir, the crowd began to fist and whisper and then to laugh. Sit down and listen to the story. You need to listen to the story to have snacks. Suspected the king first 2 feats had been mere tricks after all. Why doesn't it work? The king screamed at the charlatan, who bethought himself the only ruse left to him. There, your Majesty, there, he shouted, pointing at a bush where Babbity sat concealed. I seal her, a plain wicked witch who is blocking your magic with own evil spells. Seize her! Somebody seize her! Babbity fled from the bush, and the brigade of witch hunters set off in pursuit, unleashing their hounds, who bayed for Babbity's blood. Ow! And as soon as she reached a low hedge, the little witch vanished from sight, and when the king and the other charlatan and the couriers gained the other side, they found the pack of witch hunting hounds barking and scrabbling around bent from the age tree. Come over here and sit down. Come sit down, listen to the story. Okay. She has turned herself into a tree, screamed the charlatan, dreading least that Babbity turned back into a woman and denounced him. He added, cut her down. What do you think? Your Majesty, that is the way to treat evil witches. An axe was brought at once, and the old tree fell to the loud cheers from the couriers and charlatan. However, as they were making ready to return to the palace, the loud cackling stopped them in their tracks. Fools, cried Babbity's voice from the stump they left behind. No witch or wizard can be cut in half. Take the axe, if you do not believe, and cut the grand sorcerer in 2. The captain and brigade of the witch hunters was easy to make the experiment, but as he raised the axe, the charlatan fell to his knees, screaming for mercy and confessing his wickedness. As he was dragged away to the dungeons, the tree stump cackled more loudly than ever. By cutting a witch in half, you have unleashed a dreadful curse upon your kingdom, it told the petrified king. Henceforth, every stroke of harm that you inflict upon my fellow witches and wizards will feel like an axe stroke in your own side, until you wish you could die of it. At that, the king fell to his knees too, and told the stump he would issue a proclamation at once protecting all witches and wizards of the kingdom and allowing them to practice their magic in peace. Very good, said the stump, but you have not yet made amends to Babbity. Anything at all, cried the foolish king, wringing his hands before the stump. You will erect a statue of Babbity of me in memory of your poor washerwoman and to remind you forever of your own foolishness, said the stump. The king agreed to it at once and promised to engage the foremost sculptor in the land and have the king's statue made of pure gold. Then the shamed king and the noble men and women returned to the palace, leaving the tree stump cackling behind them. When the grounds were deserted once more, they wriggled from the hole between the roots of the tree, a stump and a stout, and the whiskery old rabbit with a wand clamped between her teeth. Babbity hopped out of the grounds, and far away, and ever after, the golden statue of the washerwoman stood upon the tree stump, and no witch or wizard was ever persecuted in the kingdom again. The end.